Hello everyone, this is Shifali and you're watching Mast Musafir. And I welcome you to the second part of my discussion on the movie Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So now the central theme of the painting of the portrait and how initially Eloise is not satisfied with the painting because she felt that it did not reflect who she really was. So I felt a lot of parallels in various other scenes as well. For instance, there is this one scene where the domestic help is embroidering. So she keeps a flower vase in front of her and then she's embroidering the flowers. So as soon we are shown that the moment she comes to the completion of that piece of embroidery, the flowers wilt, the flowers die. So the life dies as the work of art comes to completion. And similarly, the first portrait that Marianne makes of her, even though it was so elegant and beautiful, as it came to completion, it sucked out the life out of who Eloise actually was. What was the truth of her position at that point, not wanting to marry? What was her identity? What were her feelings? So the completion of the artwork happened with the simultaneous death of the truth. So such parallels were very interesting to find. And then there was also a section where they're reading a book and they're reading about the legend from Greek mythology of Orpheus and Eurydice. According to this legend, Orpheus was really in love with his wife Eurydice, but she dies. So Orpheus goes down to retrieve her back from the god of death. And the god of death agrees on a condition, but he says that on your way back, you have to go and Eurydice will follow you, and you don't have to turn till you guys are out of the door of death. And if you turn back, then we'll suck her back into the world of dead and you'll never get Eurydice back. And sadly, Orpheus is not able to control his feelings, emotions, and before exiting the door, he turns and he looks back at his wife lovingly, and sadly, Eurydice is sucked back again into the world of the dead and he has to return alone. So that's the basic story. And this image also plays and replays towards the end when Marianne loses her. The last scene is of Marianne about to step out of the door, and then she looks back and there is Eloise standing, and it's a scene of parting, and then darkness engulfs Eloise and Marianne has to leave and the door shuts on her. So, but that's not the main point. The main point is when they were reading this from the book, they all said that, why did Orpheus look back? If only he controlled and didn't look back, he would have Eurydice back in his arms. So to this, Marianne says that, he made the choice of a poet over the choice of a lover. He would rather live with the memory of his wife than actually his wife, right? That he would pine for his love rather than be with his love. But what's very important is Eloise's answer. So she says that what if Eurydice asked her to turn back? So in her case also, she refused to just be a muse of a painting, an object of a portrait. And here also she brings back agency to the woman. We always talk about Orpheus looked back, Orpheus was so much in love. But what about Eurydice? Do we wonder? I mean, I know it's just a far-fetched thought, but the fact that she would even think of it, she says that perhaps Eurydice, knowing that she would lose her, wanted him to turn back and look at her. That some things are perhaps not meant to be, some things are not perhaps meant to reach a completion, but in the moment, they deserve their truth, which can be seen as a metaphor for the relationship between Eloise and Marianne. They would, in that era, they don't end up together. But that period that they shared with each other, that love, it remains. So she again brings back agency to her. Again, talking about agency and identity, there's a scene when they're parting and it's emotional, and Marianne says that, what do you feel? And I think Eloise says that I'll have some regret, regret that we could not be together, or something like that. But Marianne says, don't regret, remember. So by again bringing back agency, you regret when you have been a victim of something, but when you remember, you're actively trying to stake a claim in a reality. So again, I feel that it brings back agency to the person, to the lover, to the beloved, to the one pining for love. That fine, your realities might change, but your memory will always and forever be a part of your core. You know who you are. Nobody can take that away from you. And that also brings me towards the end of the movie where she sees her in an orchestra, and she's the one, Marianne is the one who introduced her to the idea of an orchestra. Eloise had never been to one, and sitting there towards the end, last scene, we saw, the orchestra rising to a crescendo, and with that, it's almost a cathartic experience. Eloise also, her emotions rising, and then she bursts into tears, and it's sad and poetic, and but at the same time, there's a triumphant energy that fine, she's sad, but she's sitting by herself, watching an orchestra, listening to the music, feeling one with the music. She is free. Even in loss, and pain and deprived of her love. She's free, you know. So music also plays an important role. And of course, because it is a movie that talks about painting a portrait, so the movie unfolds and unravels as a painting almost. It's really interesting that a movie titled Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and in the middle of the movie there's a scene where we actually see Eloise's dress catching fire, and it's very poetic, and it's sort of a community bonfire, and women are singing together. Again, music leading to a crescendo and giving rise to emotions, and all of that is there. Very cinematic, very moving. It is also the starting portrait in the beginning of the movie of a woman on a sea beach with her dress catching fire. But the movie with the title, which has the word fire in it, begins with a scene of in the ocean, and it's blue, shiny water in a sunny day, and it's very deep. You know, so the all-consuming passion of fire contrasted with the depths and the coldness and the harshness and the unknown expanses of the ocean water. So the contrast in the imagery and water and fire, and her dresses also. Eloise throughout is in a dark blue sort of attire. Marianne is in reddish orangish attire. The gown in which she's to be painted is green, you know, very earthy. And at one point, all the women, Marianne, Eloise, and even the house help, Sophie. So at one point, all these women are shown wearing that green gown. All of them sit as a muse for the painting to be done in that green gown. Everybody is a subject object at some point or the other. And lastly, the movie is a feminist movie. It's also a sort of social commentary. It touches upon so many issues, like what it meant to be a woman in that era, about women, companionship, friendships, relationships, love, work, business, marriage, even abortion, how women dealt with it back in those days, and women community, how they spent time together, reading books, playing cards, cooking together, taking care of each other in sickness, women singing together, coming together. You know, it paints a women's world. You barely see any man in the whole movie. Nothing against men here, but it just feels that a lot of these women experiences are left to the imagination and not as well documented as other stuff are. So it's good to see that side being explored. And because you're dealing with the sensitive issue, homosexuality, about lesbians, about women who love. So all of this made by a director who's a woman herself, of course, who wrote the story, directed it, and also herself is a lesbian. So we see that sort of sensitivity being reflected in the portrayal. And for example, that social commentary bit that I was talking about, and with this I promise I wind up, we see things like as a woman in 18th century France, she could not marry and choose to continue her father's business of art and painting. But when she puts up an exhibition, she has to put it up in her father's name, even though the paintings are her own. That you cannot claim ownership, or you'll not be publicly accepted, something like that. And then she also talks about the idea of a choice, that Eloise doesn't really have a choice. She's the countess's daughter. They have to marry to keep up all their estate and this and that. So all of these things. So wonderful movie. I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot more things, but that's it. I'm done blabbering all the while. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this discussion. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.